call this meeting of the Town of Silver City Planning and Zoning Commission to order. We will begin by rising and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And a roll call, Mr. Marshall.
How about Commissioner Wheaton-Smith?
Present.
Commissioner Middlestead?
Present.
Commissioner Snyder?
Here. Present.
And Chairman Seibel?
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, excellent. We'll move on to the approval of minutes of the September 6th, 2022 meeting of the commission. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, excellent. Does anyone have any changes that need to be made?
Nope.
All right, very good. Appreciate the correct spelling of the name.
It's just yours.
So, yeah, the copy that I set up there is the corrected copy.
I suppose that there would be, if I might, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
an administrative change on the second page, top paragraph, 7 or 8 lines down and another 4. It's upgraded me from what I am to a councillor, and I think the word probably ought to be commissioner.
That's probably a good point. I mean, in all fairness, I think once you hold the title, don't you always?
You get stuck with it, yeah.
Well, then you should be mayor.
I was mayor pro tem for one term.
I was only a counselor too. So.
Oh,
All right, well, with that change, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes. I move to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission Tuesday, September the 6th of 2022, as written with the change from councillor to commission in 2 places for Wheaton-Smith.
All right, excellent. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And those opposed, motion carries. Very good. We have no old business on the agenda, which brings us to public hearings. And I will now open this public hearing, ZC 22-01, request for a zone change for a tract of land from residential B2 to highway commercial, described as the Plata Vista subdivision, block 16, lot 6, and lot 7. The eastern 2 feet of lot 6, 0.117 acres. The property is addressed as 1915 Gold Street in Silver City, and the applicant is Robert Grunstein. And we'll begin by asking anyone that's present that would like to testify in this public hearing to please come to the podium so that I can administer the oath. It does not obligate you to testify, but if you think there's any chance that you might want to say something during the hearing, please come and get sworn in, because if you change your mind later and you want to say something and you didn't get sworn, it's a big pain in the butt to go back. All right. Very good. If I could get all of you to please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Robert Grunstein,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that the testimony I am about to give
that the testimony that I am about to give
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
on penalty of perjury.
on penalty of perjury.
Thank you. You may be seated. And we'll begin, Mr. Marshall, with the staff report.
Thank you, Chairman. Before you is And I apologize, I did not do a PowerPoint presentation like my predecessor is so good at. Before you is a zone change 22-01, a request for a map amendment, zone change from residential B2 zoning district to highway commercial zoning district for the described tract of land. The applicant is Robert Grunstein, who is present tonight. August 22nd, the owner, Robert Grunstein, completed an application and paid the fee for a zone change for the subject property. The building was previously used as a church, and the applicant now desires to use the building as an art school for youth and the community. As described, the property would be utilized as an entertainment venue. Indoor entertainment is not allowed use in the RB2 zone, and thus requires a zone map amendment for this activity to continue. While the application describes the activities as an academy, events have been advertised at this property since the academy was located at this address, which I believe you have 2 announcements in your packet. The Town of Silver City Comp Plan 2017, page 3 through 24, C, Development Regulation Zoning. The town should coordinate land use and community design goals with the goals of other planning elements such as housing, community design, transportation, and economic development. The town's development regulation should reflect this integrated approach to planning, ensuring all new development has a beneficial influence on the quality of life to improve future opportunities for the community. I'm not going to read the next paragraph to you. And then, as required by section 6.2.11 of the Land Use Code of 2010, the Community Development Department contacted the 21 property owners as identified by Grant County tax rolls within 300 feet of the affected area by mail about the proposed zone change. One letter was returned as unable to forward, and until today there was no other communications brought to the Community Development Department. Today we did receive a phone call from a tenant neighbor that states that she does have issues with the theater. I am elderly and have medical issues and have a significant difficult time getting to and from my car. Now even more so since most of the parking in front of my house has been taken up by people at the theater, upwards of 3 times a week. It's an accident waiting to happen for me. This is an elderly neighborhood and the noise and parking issues are a problem. I've heard children yelling and drumming happening at 7 a.m. on Sundays. Can I put tenant-only parking on the street in front of my home? Is there a way for them to park elsewhere that won't affect the elderly people around the neighborhood from parking near their homes? If the courtesy and parking issues can be resolved, I wouldn't have a problem with them being there. As it sits now, it's an issue for me, end quote. And then when the Planning and Zoning Commission makes its recommendation to the town council about the request at hand, it shall at a minimum make at least one of the following findings. You have those 7 on the paper in front of you. It is recommendation of planning and, oh, sorry, those are minutes. So that's it. We'll stand for questions or can proceed.
All right, are there any questions from the commission staff?
I have some questions.
Sure. Mr. Middlestaff.
I was curious why it was designated an entertainment venue and not an educational facility when schools frequently have events, sporting events and arts events at all times of the day and evening. And I don't understand why it couldn't be designated as a school and then only need a conditional use instead of a zoning change.
So I believe the definitions in our land use code for a school is basically K through 12.
Okay.
And while this is an academy teaching the arts of acting and such, they are also putting on events.
But if we approve the commercial change, then there's nothing, they could do whatever they want with that property. Is that correct? It wouldn't have to be a school. It could be whatever they wanted,
It could be anything that would be allowed in that,
commercial
That
highway,
zone.
which is pretty broad.
it is.
And this is still a residential area. So,
So it, looking at it on the map, it's one of those buffer areas where the zones butt up against each other, and sometimes those are very, very difficult to zone and to regulate and maintain peace and harmony between the occupants of the two zones.
right, so these are the questions I have and wish I had further training upon.
Yeah, I was looking at the map for the zoning, and the way that building sits, there's like 3 mobile homes in front, and then it goes, it's still in residential. It kind of makes it like an island.
I believe it connects on the Swan side to other commercial.
I believe, though, it would leave a weird little island of residential B, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Are there any other questions of the staff?
Is there any other way to allow the building without doing a zone change?
And I think Commissioner Middlestat came the closest that we might be able to come, but there's that issue of definitions, which I was gonna,
That's what I was hoping to find,
right.
because,
Also point out that basically what we bring to the commission is what has been applied for.
Right.
okay. That was one of my other questions, was this specifically asked?
It sort of sounds, though, like the applicant might have been steered a bit here.
That's how I read it.
I have little doubt to that, and I'm sure he would probably say the same.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions of staff? We can always go back and ask more.
Okay, I'm good for now.
Okay. I'd like to ask the applicant to please approach the podium, and we'll remind you that there's that list of 7 findings that we have to make, which you addressed, actually, which you appreciate in your application.
Wait,
But-
I still have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Because under school, it says elementary, secondary, but then there's all other schools. Can you direct me to what all other schools might be? That's where I was thinking it would fit. 331BB, I don't know what that means. 33. Am I gonna find it here?
I think that's an interpretation that the commission can.
Right, let's let Mr. Grinstein make his presentation, and we can get back to that when we get to our discussion.
I have some pictures of the neighborhood and the building. Could I pass those to you, or do I hand them?
Are there copies for all of us, or it's just?
Yes.
That'd be fantastic. Bring them on up, thank you.
Sometimes you don't know what the neighborhood's like till you walk it. I live like a block and a half away from the building, so I'm always walking my dog around.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So the top page is some of our youth actors, and they were a little bit bored there. They're waiting for the parade to start. We were in the homecoming parade, and the kids were really excited to support the college, and even the football team came over to take pictures with them, which really excited the kids. But yeah, I took some pictures of just the surrounding area and this things. You can see there's one building on Swan that the building overlooks. It's probably, as the crow flies, like 40 feet away. And this building has been abandoned, repeatedly broken into, and the people that break into these things, they don't seem like nice people. They're definitely scary for the elderly people in the neighborhood. And so I've been trying to talk to the owners to see if we could buy that building, pull it down and provide parking there, because it's like an attractive nuisance. No matter what they put up on the boards, people still break in. And they've got an abandoned van in their carport, and it's a real neighborhood nuisance. And you can kind of get a flavor for what's around the area. We have primarily single-wide mobile homes that are quite old. Very rarely do people park on the streets by the mobile homes. I think a lot of people don't have cars for the park inside the park, but I hardly see anybody parking on the street there. Where we have a house just to the left of us, it's kind of run down, and they have 2 abandoned vehicles, a street cleaner and a defunct pickup truck, and they have a mean pit bull. The next picture is kind of in front of the church. You can still see the cross on the top. But it's a humble building, but it was designed as a church, so it's kind of designed not to transmit sound to the neighborhood. You know, it always amazes me that we'll have something going on, and I stand outside and I don't hear it. The 2, like where the VW Bug is, those 2 mobile homes sit behind the building. Kind of run down, and probably if they ever had a building inspection, I don't know if they would pass. But this, and then one of the neighbors, he does windows and door replacements, and he's lately brought in a moving company. Again, as a crow flies, his commercial zoning is about 60 or 70 feet from us, and I think he got, I don't know if you call it rezoning or a variance to do it. And you can see his big moving trucks. And it turns out that one of the owners of that, his wife is in our place, and they've kind of agreed to let us use their extra parking, because they have quite a big lot. And then on the corner of Swan is the convenience store, and that attracts some unsavory characters over there. But, you know, we try to keep the neighborhood clean. We have some nice young people that kind of keep an eye out for the neighborhood and kind of provide security for the surrounding neighborhood. So what we're about is, we're a pending nonprofit. The government goes really slow on giving you the approval of a nonprofit. And our mission is to help young people, adults, and seniors have an outlet for art. And, you know, we teach theater, acting, all the other things, the sound, the sets, the costuming. And we probably have about 40 or 50 people involved, but not all at one time. We've got about 20 young people that are about 10 to 17, and they're very active, but they come 3 times a week after school. And then when we have the adult theaters, adult people, they're usually rehearsing 4 nights a week, and again, they don't stay late or make noise. One of our greatest actresses in our last production of Crossing Delancey was 80 years old. She was a star of the show. She didn't have hip surgery for 3 months so she could star in the show, and she was wonderful. She got standing ovations. It was really cool. So we don't charge anybody to participate. It's all free. We're supported by donations. So any of the kids, if they need a costume, if they need acting lessons, singing lessons, it's totally free to the community. We will always be a nonprofit. We want to help the children have this outlet for art, because the high schools closed down the theaters. Western New Mexico University closed that wonderful theater and fired all the professors of theater. And it's really lacking. And some of the other schools would like to come visit and have their students involved and get them to see some of the presentations. You know, it feels to me like a church almost does similar to us. They have music, they have people on the altar, maybe not on the stage. It's kind of like the building fits so well for our use. And I don't think it's any pressure on the neighborhood to have this use versus a church use. Although the churches, unfortunately in town, are having dwindling congregations, and it's astounding. Like this church during COVID melted down to like no membership. So if the building's just going to remain unused and boarded up, it's not like it could be a residence. You know, so if it doesn't become a good use like what we're trying to do, I think it'll just be an eyesore and a way for homeless people to break in and cause problems. But if you have any I just want to respond to that objection about that lady. We had one neighbor who was very concerned about the parking, and we actually set up cones so no one would park there. And if we knew, which elderly people were affected, we'd be very glad to do that and make sure that they would have no problem getting in and out of their car. And we're trying to bring as much parking off-site as we can to put less pressure on the neighborhood.
And Mr. Grinstein, I know that you did this in your application, but I wanted to ask you if you think I remember this. I read and then I sleep, and then I wondered if you could address the findings that we're required to reach at least one of in order to make this decision. So
Could you repeat that?
I wonder if you could address there's that list of 7 findings,
Okay.
and I wondered if you might address those. Just something I usually ask of folks that.
Copy. Thank you. Okay. I don't know exactly how the town's comprehensive plan is. We may be not in total compliance with it, but I don't think it's like a hazardous use or anything that would hurt the neighborhood. We're trying to improve that neighborhood. It's pretty rough over there, and we're trying to do improvements to the building. We've planted flowers. We try to upgrade it as much as we can. So, even though it's probably not in the exact zoning that, is in what you have written, again, I think, the neighborhood impact is minimal, and if anything, it would help upgrade the neighborhood. Because I've noticed, I've lived a lot of places, and when you start having abandoned buildings, it's like a cancer. It just spreads. And having a building in use with people and traffic really helps make a neighborhood safer and less likely to go downhill. I'm on 3, and I'm trying to understand the comprehensive plan. It is in a really densely populated area. The mobile homes there are on really small lots. It's not like it's a deluxe neighborhood or a really high-end fancy area. And almost all the land is used. I don't think there's much vacant land in that area. It's all been built on. Let's see, on number 4, I don't think we'll hurt the public health, safety, or general welfare of anybody. But maybe slightly different than what's in your land use code. I'm looking at 5. Yeah,
We don't need to meet them all. So
oh, okay.
apparently.
Yeah, hopefully, it will be a great addition to the community, help a lot of adults, seniors, children, and put no adverse effect on the neighborhood. And again, I don't know the legalisms of zoning, but if they're worried about like switching it to commercial, I don't know if they could put some kind of restrictive use. It could only be used as an arts academy theater and nothing else. I don't know what you would call that, but if you could do that, we could assure you that it's not going to become a big commercial party place or something.
Thank you, Mr. Grinstein. And that is frankly one of the challenges that we're presented with when we have a zone change before us, is that there isn't really any way for us to put a condition on a zone change.
What about if, there was something in the deed that restricted the use, that I could change the deed and say, this can only be used for this purpose?
The issue with that, of course, is that the town doesn't enforce restrictions in deeds,
really?
unfortunately. So it doesn't
Wow.
help us for our
Oh,
purposes.
yeah, it's all
Certainly your-
zoning
Your
stuff.
neighbors could then take future owners to court and say
Uh-huh.
but that's not something that the town
Hmm.
enforces, so that doesn't help us.
Interesting.
But thank you for that. Was there anything else to your presentation?
I'm, pretty much done. I just want, to help this community. I moved here about 5 years ago. I saw a lack of, arts, and even though we have a lot of artists in town, for some reason the theaters weren't thriving. They were putting on very few shows. Again, COVID had something to do with it. And there wasn't much for the youth. And, we're just trying to fulfill a need. I never knew we'd have a zoning issue. I didn't know that a church could be in any residential zone, even though it's a fairly heavy, intensive use in terms of traffic on a Sunday. But I know now.
Yeah.
Our youth theater director, Monty, might have a few things to say, and you might have some questions for him.
Absolutely. Are there any questions of the applicant from the commission?
If I
Commissioner
may,
Reed-Smith.
I haven't even thought of how to phrase my question. It probably boils down to two things. When this was a church, it obviously had traffic going to it. Do you have a feeling for the difference in the traffic load with your operation as opposed to when it was a functioning church?
Well, the occupancy of this building with the seating could be about 100 folks, which at some time I'm sure the church had when pre-COVID and all that. I wish, there were so many patrons of theater that we would sell out all the time, but we typically get about 40 or 50 people for a production. It's not a real big crowd, and usually most of them are 55 plus, and they'll come two to a car, and they're not rowdy people. They're just people who come. Mostly we see people who move from other cities that miss theater, and they're so happy that we're there. But these are just like church people, very quiet, calm people. They're not rowdy. They're not. We don't serve alcohol. Nobody's partying. They're just there to see the production.
Have you used cones in the past help?
Yeah, when one of the neighbors requested that they had trouble getting into their driveway, we immediately used the cones, and we would do it for any of the neighbors because I'm real sensitive to elderly people. I took care of a lot of them, and the last thing, when they don't have good mobility, making it harder for them, I never want to do that.
And have you had any problems with the police department or anything with putting cones up?
They haven't said anything. And they're orange cones, they're really visible. And we're just trying to protect parking spots where people have their homes and want to have that parking spot, and we're fine to do that.
And do you feel that using cones would address the individual who said if that could be resolved, the parking issues?
I think so. We sell our tickets outside in the front little patio, and we're watching the parking going on all the time. And if somebody would park weirdly, since we have 3 people at the ticket booth, we could have one just enforce that and say, there's an elderly person who lives here, they need this spot, here's a spot over here, could you please move? I mean, we'd be glad to do it.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed-Smith. Any other questions for the commission? All right, thank you, Mr. Bruce.
Thank you.
We may have more questions for you as we go on.
I'll be here.
Is there anyone present who'd like to speak in favor of this application?
Hello everyone, I'm Montilius Valenzuela. I'm the youth director at Starlight. I'm also an actor, stage manager. I do whatever I have to whenever it comes to putting on a show. And yeah, I think what he covered was basically what I will, but I think one of the most pressing things is that, yes, like we could sit here and we can tell you all about, what we do and how good we do it or what good we're doing, but I know that there are some issues here as far as, you can't put any restrictions, and there's a possible, there's a chance that may cause some turmoil. There may be some things that could happen if the space fell into the wrong hands, and all of a sudden you had someone who had the opportunity to do whatever they wanted with the place. But I know Mr. Grunstein and his business partner, Mr. Navon, they're very careful with how they manage the real estate, the properties that they purchase, and the condition that they keep them in, also who they choose to sell them to. I mean, I doubt that they're ever going to sell Starlight Theater. They both love it very much. And if they ever did, they'd make sure it went into good hands. But I can't confirm that we'll be moving and when, but there are talks of moving us to a different location that is much more commercialized. So it'd be in the downtown area. But for now, I'd say that the things that we do there are strictly performance. And of course, if we had something where we were having like a show, like a musical show, where it'd be much louder, we'd be very keen and very open to give advance notice on it, and we'd do whatever we could so that it wouldn't be a disturbance. I mean, we have folks that play music upstairs in a rehearsal room, and if that was what she was speaking of, the opposing person, I mean, I didn't know specifically what the noise complaint was. I just heard it was about noise. But if it was that, which is what I would guess it would be, we're actually getting some soundproof fabric from one of Mr. Grunstein's establishments, and we'd be happy to do whatever we could so that there wasn't a whole lot of noise coming out. But I mean, the shows that we do, all the shows that we've done, they haven't been loud shows. I mean, there may be some music in between the scenes, scene changes, maybe some intermission music, some intro music, some end music, but for, I'd say probably 80%, 90% of the shows is strictly people talking, like you and me. And the rest of the music, it's turned down loud enough so that it doesn't bother the occupants inside of the building. So I know that there's a lot of, like I said, there's that worry that you can't really put restrictions on it. But, while we're there, we're not going to be doing anything other than music and theater. And I mean, there may be a possibility that we do, I have a plan for a show where we kind of gather as much of the artists from the community, anything, poetry, music, painting, weaving, just pretty much anything, kind of like an artistic implosion to bring them all together to sort of see what art is in town and what is possible. They're always welcome to perform there. And get them all together. But I mean, that's something that wouldn't be anything crazy. I think the loudest thing we have there is we have a rock band, but we'd be welcome to give them advance notice on when that's going to be and do whatever we can so that it's not very loud. But yeah, I think right now it's in great hands. We have, like Bob said, we have 15 youth players there now, and that's just sort of who we have. I mean, we have more kids who have done it in the past, and we've also have like more people who want to do it, young and old. But no, they're great. We have a great group of kids, and it's not a very big theater community, let alone performing arts. So it's great to see kids, doing things that aren't revolved around sports. I mean, I love sports, but I think it's good to get kids a little more involved in things that they're not normally involved in, especially whenever it's a harmless thing. But again, I can't fix those problems, but I can assure you that for now and in the foreseeable future that the theater's in good hands, and we're not looking to do anything that'll be a big disturbance.
Thank you, Mr. Valenzuela.
Yep.
Are there any questions from the commission?
I have one for the current speaker. I may have missed it. Did you say, do you have kids from the nearby area, youths who participate in this program also?
Are you speaking of the neighborhood?
Yes.
I believe we have, let's see, we may have had some in the past, but they're not with us. They decided to take a break. And I don't know of any other. Those are probably the closest ones, maybe like a block away to the west. And then also, I apologize, I forgot to bring something up, but if we do start growing, which would be a good problem to have, growing beyond, parking space, and it did become a bigger issue that couldn't be dealt with cones. or something like that. We have the First Presbyterian Church across the street, and I got confirmation from his business partner, Mr. Joe Navon, that they've offered to give us parking whenever need be. And so like he said, we have 40 people, 50 coming to the shows at like our busiest nights. And they're always pretty considerate, but if it came down to it, if we were like flooding the building with people, all of a sudden we just had this grand audience, we could always just get in contact with them. They have a parking lot built for hundreds of cars, and we'd be able to deal with that issue pretty easily.
And my follow-on then would be, do you believe that with that option and also the cones that you will have met the wishes and desires of the neighbour who raised a concern but said she would support it if the parking issues were resolved?
Yes, I do. I think, in my personal opinion, would just be to, I hadn't known that the parking was an issue until just recently, but I think that would be a first plan of action after I leave here, would to be to set up a post on like Facebook, hopefully whatever other platforms we're using, and let people know with pictures and with descriptions, this is where we would like you to park, and then just do a double check with the church, let them know what days we're going to have a large amount of people there.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. Is anyone else present who'd like to speak in favor of the application? Or is there anyone present who'd like to speak in opposition to the application? All right, seeing none, that brings us to discussion from the commission, and I wonder if someone might make a motion.
I just was going to go back to what Middlesex said about it being an education facility. If we didn't do the zone change, would that be an option, or would that have to be at a different meeting?
I think it's an either-or thing. The educational option would be an option to keep us from having to do the zone change, and yes, it would mean that we would have to basically do a different application and do this process all over again. I don't think there isn't any way, because we noticed a meeting to do one thing. So even if we didn't have all the timelines in the land use code, we have the issues of public meetings to deal with. So,
Would you care for a motion so we can discuss?
I would very much like a motion.
Commissioner Seibel, I move to approve zone change 22-01, request for a map amendment, zone change from residential B2 zoning district to highway commercial zoning district for attractive land described as subdivision, Plata Vista Block 16, Lot 6 and Lot 7, and the east to something or others. Lot 6 is 6.117 acres, property addressed as 1915 Gold Street, Silver City, New Mexico, with finding number 4 having been met.
All right.
I think that wasn't 6 acres, I think it's .117 acres.
Right.
Okay, thank you for the correction. Accepted.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
I appreciate that. Second by Commissioner Snyder, which brings us to discussion of the motion. Mr. Grudenstein, I wonder if you might join us at the podium again. I had a question that I meant to ask earlier and didn't, so I'll take the opportunity now. When we were having the presentation from staff, we talked a little bit about Commissioner Middlestad's suggestion that there might be other ways to approach this. I wonder about your application for the zone change. Was that your original intent when you came to the town, or were you seeking more of this educational institution? Just walk me through that.
A combination of, the performing is a culmination of 6 or 8 weeks of rehearsals where you're basically teaching acting and all the things that go to it. So a small part is performance, but so much is education. There's so much to teach in acting and music and so on. You know, I was originally trying to go for an educational institution kind of thing, but in the zoning department, they were kind of guiding me now to go for rezoning. But I would have been fine with the other way too.
Okay. I
One
appreciate that.
contribution, and I'd have to check with an attorney, but, you know, I plan to leave the building to like a foundation in perpetuity for theatrical use and endow it with money so it can go on. And I don't know whether I would donate to the city or to one of the charitable organizations or form my own thing, but, you know, if I did that, maybe that would get us around some of these zoning issues, because it would be part of an estate plan and a nonprofit that would only use it for that purpose for perpetuity.
Appreciate that. And, I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say this, but I don't think any member of the commission is opposed to what you're trying to do there.
Yeah.
I agree.
There's just
I
the
just not
the issue of the
comfortable with
best
it.
way in which
Yeah.
to do
Yeah,
it.
and I'm willing to be as flexible and run through whatever hoops it takes.
Right. And I guess, Mr. Marshall, my big concern here in reading through the land use code, in addition to just sort of the general problem that you have when you rezone something commercial, which means down the road anything can happen there, essentially outside of a, you know, boiler factory, is the issue of that change of use. I don't see how that doesn't trigger the parking requirements in the land use code. And I just don't see how this property could meet the parking requirements in the land use code if we did that. That's sort of the flip side. To me, I think you could make an argument if you did the educational institution that it wasn't really a change in use and we don't need to mess with parking, but if we're gonna rezone it commercial, I just don't know how I don't see how we get around that. And although, you know, Mr. Valenzuela obviously the property owner has done a lot of work to accommodate the limited parking, unfortunately, the land use code is very restrictive in terms of how it allows parking requirements to be met. Basically, it has to be within the lot that we're talking about. And so that's my big concern here. Do you have any thoughts there, Mr. Marshall?
I believe the land use code has the parking requirements, and then it has the option for an alternate parking plan that the community development director can approve. And I believe they've provided evidence that they have an alternate parking plan on 2 other properties. And I understand the concern with the commercial. I also am curious to think back at when this was originally developed on the zone map. Had that building been there and not been a church, had the commercial zone might have carried through that property. Because it was a church, it was not necessary to, and it cleaned up the lines. That's just food for thought. I think the testimony that I had heard in the office, the talk, and I think it's been pretty well confirmed tonight that it's a performance venue, and that leads us back to having the zoning for an entertainment.
And I guess that I would argue the other side of that, which is, you know, Silver High School includes the Little Theater. Does the fact that the Little Theater is on the campus of Silver High School make that an entertainment venue as opposed to an educational institution? And so, I mean, I think this is an argument that you could make either way. And certainly the lines are gray, but doing it as an educational institution, I think would solve at least one problem that would make me feel a lot better about things. On the other hand, it is right there with a lot of other commercial zoning, and it's not a big leap to just go ahead and do the rezoning either. So
I have a question about this lot 6. Is it really only .117 acres?
It's pretty small. I think
I
the
mean,
church was struggling, and they sold off the surrounding land. And I had heard, but I've never proved, got to prove that in the 30s and 40s, it was some kind of social club like the Lions or
So I
the
don't really
Elks or
understand where
something.
because I live only 2 blocks away.
Oh, okay.
So I walked the property, what I perceived to be the property, and I mean, there are problematic properties in the area, as there is all over Silver City. But there are homes in a U shape around the property, and then the people in the trailers. So my sense of having walked the property in my neighborhood is that it is largely residential. But the size of the property really, I would have guessed it was at least 2 or 3 acres. So I'm
Would be great.
confused.
I mean, I wish I didn't sell off that
So,
excess
so
land.
I guess I don't understand the property lines, is that somewhere
I
in
could
here?
show you,
There is a,
Oh, there it
there is a
is,
plat of
okay.
survey there,
Well, thank
which
you.
does say that's what the acreage is. So,
Yeah, so it is
If I can
kind of,
approach, I can give you a big plot plan.
no, I have it, I just
Yeah,
realized.
we have a
I just
copy
realized, this
essentially
is
of
just
that.
confusion that just came up just through talking tonight. I was like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
But now I see. So essentially, the visible parking area, do you own that?
Yeah, well, the part, I guess on the side of the building on 20th Street,
Yeah,
where it's white and not crosshatched, I think it parks about 8 cars there, and then we can park a few in the front, maybe 2 or 3.
And it looks like they own about a third of it, and the
Yeah.
rest of it's in the street right away. honestly.
okay. And then you don't own any of the surrounding?
No.
Okay, that was just interesting.
Basically, that building covers
Their whole thing.
every inch of that property.
Yeah. Okay, well, that answered that question.
And if I understand it right, it's residential completely around it then?
I've got the map pulled up here.
Yeah, that those pieces of property are,
This is where that PowerPoint presentation really comes in handy.
As far as
Sorry.
I know, the commercial stuff got along Swan, which some of the, almost backs up to our building. I think that they got a rezoning for the window and door replacement place, but they are on Swan, but they're really close to us.
If I read the zoning map correctly, the property that's directly across Gold Street from this property is zone commercial already. And then the property along Swan Street that would sort of touch corners with this is also zone commercial.
that is important information.
I mean, I can pass that, and you've got a copy of it there, but it's difficult.
It's really hard to see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it is essentially surrounded by commercial.
And the only real issue would be it's gonna leave that weird little block of residential B immediately to the south.
Which the trailers are.
Which is really the only issue from a potential
Okay.
spot zoning standpoint. But other than
Okay.
that, it's a pretty straightforward case, I'd say.
So I guess back to my original question, what is meant by all other schools in our code of ordinances?
I did a quick search of the online version of the code, and I do not find a definition in the land use code for, well, schools in general or all other schools either.
Okay,
So
so it does seem like that's a tool we could possibly use.
from my perspective, I would say that's an option. The downside to that, of course, is we have to send the applicant back through
Back,
the
right.
process again.
That would make me feel more comfortable, given what he hopes to do.
Well, my general thought, since there's a silence, I'm in favor of it because I'm trying to balance the benefit to the neighborhood with the youth, the balance of using the building constructively in an area where there are depressed buildings. There are substantial properties close to it that are commercial, and there is also a possibility that the applicant may acquire some additional property. However, they also have an option with the nearby church, which addresses the issue of an alternate plan on parking. So that's the reason why I'm in favor of it. Sometimes things are never very clean. Yes, we could say no, or we could defer this to a different time and place certain, while other approaches were addressed. I'm not sure that would achieve that much because of the close to adjacent properties that are zoned commercial. So that's why I'm in favor of this. Is it ideal? No. Is it perfect? No. The fact that you're addressing the issue of what if you did move to another location, and that you have put thought into a trust or some other mechanism, none of which is enforceable by us, but it does mean that you have taken it very seriously and you have addressed the concern, to my satisfaction anyway, of the neighbor who said if the parking problem is resolved for her, then she has no objection. So as far as I can see, in my mind, there is no public objection. There are adjacent commercial properties. There is an alternate plan, and that's why I would vote in favor of this zone change. But I thoroughly understand Commissioner Sidewell's concerns also.
Commissioner Snyder, Commissioner Snyder, you have any thoughts?
I mean, I kind of looked at I went by and looked at the plot. I don't think it attaches to any commercial property, this 1.117 is my concern.
And again, based on what I
What
can
you saw,
see,
you know,
is across Gold Street, it's adjacent.
right here.
Right. With that property that's across that street. And it's difficult to tell. You need to go to the county maps, but
Yeah.
it appears that this property is also zoned commercial.
But I do think it's really good, it's a very good use of the property. I agree with that.
You know, the issue I always have with zone changes is just, no matter, for better or worse, I usually try to mentally just go, no, whenever they're talking about what their plans are,
Right.
because it's almost irrelevant.
Right.
Because we're not, when it comes to zoning, we have to look at everything that's allowed in that, because, you know, zoning runs with the land, and it is basically that way in perpetuity. So it's, that's the concern.
I also add weight to the report from the various departments. The police department didn't have any objections, engineering didn't, public works didn't, code enforcement didn't comment one way or the other. And I think there's a presumption of the guidance from staff unless one can substantively overrule it. So, anyway, I've said enough. That's why I'm in favor of it.
No, I mean,
Commissioner Schmitz?
I appreciate your input, because I can't.
Right. All right. Is there any further discussion from the commission?
None from me.
All right. Well, we have a motion and a second to approve ZC 22-01 request for a map amendment zone change from residential B2 to highway commercial zoning for a tract of land on Plata Vista subdivision, block 16, lot 6 and 7, and the eastern 2 feet of lot 6, addressed as 1915 Gold Street in Silver City. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
No?
All right, hearing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Snyder,
Let's say aye.
Commissioner Wheaton Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Middlestat,
Aye.
Chairman Seibel.
Aye. Motion carries. And this is incidentally, should have mentioned this earlier, and I did not. A zone change, of course, is one of those things that is done by ordinance by the town council. And so while there are some things that we're the final deciders on, zone changes are only a recommendation to the town council. That recommendation will be forwarded on to them, and that will get scheduled, and the town staff will be in touch when that happens.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and consideration. Hopefully this is an institution the city can be proud of.
Absolutely. Thanks for making it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If that's all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you come out and see a show. They're Broadway quality.
All right, that concludes zone change ZC 22-01 and public hearings, which moves us to new business. There is no new business on the agenda and no community forum, so that moves us to reports from staff. Mr. Marshall.
I'm still standing.
That's good. We're missing a staff member.
We are missing a staff member, and I think it's pretty obvious and everybody recognizes the difference in the quality of work that she did. And she was a great asset to this community and our office, and personal and professional. So she leaves a big hole. We will be advertising. We will be doing a national search, and probably we're looking at finding a search consultant to help us broaden the search and make sure that we find a good qualified applicant for the position. In the meantime, you're probably stuck with me. I apologize for not having a presentation for you on PowerPoint tonight. I kind of picked up this case in the last week. So
No apology necessary.
We're-
Given the circumstances.
we do have another zone change for next month that we're working on. So that one, the letters are going out tomorrow. Signs went out today. So we'll need to make sure we have a quorum at that meeting. There's a lot of activity going on, and this applicant brought up some code enforcement issues, and we're aggressively working on code enforcement. We now have 3 people addressing code enforcement
Wow.
issues. And we're meeting every other Thursday as a team with all of the department staff that address codes, and going over all the issues and how we interact with each other and try to get these solved before they end up in a hearing. Because hearings don't make the community better. They just take money out of people's pocket that probably can't afford it. So our goal is always to gain compliance first.
Yeah.
As far as updating the code, I'll take advice from the commission, but I think we should probably, we've been putting this off for so long, I think we should probably start working with a consultant and moving forward.
Is the consultant on board already?
No,
So you're still looking for a consultant?
I got to pick that up,
Okay.
unless you would rather wait for a new director, but
Well,
that code is 12 years old.
Yeah, and I just found a mistake in it.
I remember it well.
There's more than one.
I'd like to get my name off of it.
And I understand we'll be having an administrative issue also on next month's meeting to address a vice chair.
I just learned of that at the beginning of this meeting.
For both the, I mean, I guess my preference would be, we've lived with this land use code and its many problems for a long time. And if we really are going to do a national search and find someone with some knowledge of planning and community development, I think that person could be instrumental in helping find a consultant to do that rewrite and to help us steer that process. So, if that's something that's imminent and, we're looking to get that filled in 3 months, say, or even 6 months, I don't know that there's anything so pressing in this rewrite that we couldn't wait a bit to get someone to help helm that process, because it's such an important one. And we won't do it again for 10 years or 15 years or God knows how many years. So, I mean, I'd love to see us leverage all of the expertise that we have at our disposal, and hopefully when we complete the search, we will have substantial expertise at our disposal there. So, that's my preference, but I'm only one person, so.
I think your point is well taken, but I also think that there's a lot of preliminary work and working with the commission and the staff to discuss our options and what the industry is developing into.
Sure.
That by the time we got down to the meat and potatoes of the land use code, I will hope that we have somebody.
Yeah, there's a lot of education and discussion certainly that we can embark on there, but as far as actually picking someone to do the work, I kind of would really like to have whoever our planning director is involved in that selection, because they're going to have to work so closely with whoever that is.
We can discuss it, and I have not opened those emails to see where the
Where we
discussion
are.
is at.
Right. Okay.
It's rather difficult going in that office.
You're carrying a heavy load, that whole office is, and we know that. This is a big, difficult transition that y'all are going through, for lack of a better word at my fingertips.
Yep.
But, so I just personally want you to know you have support, and that we're gonna, I feel like if there's anything we could do, please let us know.
I appreciate that, and I really appreciate, and Jackie and Maria have commented on how polite all of you are, and that's not something we always see, as you can imagine. But they're really awesome staff, and they work well together, and we work well as a team. So we're going to try to continue to support the commission and the community. Thank you.
We appreciate that.
I have one thing I need. Can I have a copy of the comprehensive plan as well?
Sure.
Okay, I'll just come pick it up when you guys are ready. Thanks.
Okay.
I've got a question. Are we still on for the 19th on training, or is that postponed?
That's what I wanted to know too.
I have zero idea of if any communication went on with the attorney about that training.
Can you find out for us? I mean, I think it would be a worthwhile thing to do.
It was the 19th.
Yeah.
19th.
I will find out and see where we're at, let you know tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, if that's still on the calendar, we were going to do it at 5 p.m. on the 19th.
And would that be here, or would that be in?
We talked about, I always like doing it here because we can broadcast it for the edification of the larger community, but I don't think we had gotten that far, so.
We'll have to check, make sure this room is available, if
Yep.
that's your wishes.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Marshall?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Move on to reports from the commission. And I did receive an email on September 23rd from Commissioner Laszlo Sandor, which I'll read to you. Dear Chairman Seibel, this letter is to advise you of my intention to resign my position as Commissioner for the Planning and Zoning Commission. This will become effective immediately. It has been an honor to serve with you and to support the town of Silver City. Sincerely, Laszlo Sandor. He did copy our Community Development Director at the time on that email, but that was shortly before she left us. So I apologize for not thinking about that and passing that along. But Commissioner Sandor was a great asset to this commission, and I know he'll be sorely missed. And I did call him and speak to him, and without getting too deeply into details, he's got some things going on in his personal life that are going to require a lot of travel, and he's looking for life simplification, and this seemed like a good way to simplify, which I think we can probably all sympathize with. So I will also say, taking the privilege was probably not mine of speaking for the whole commission, but certainly I'd like to extend our condolences to the family of Priscilla Shoup, and say how much she meant to the commission and to this community, and that she will be sorely missed. Are there any other reports from the commission?
No.
Okay, well, that's easy enough. Any community input? Community, do you have any input? Come on up if you do.
No. I was trying to come up with something clever.
Well, there's always next month, so.
Exactly.
Well, I'm gonna stop letting him go.
All right. Well, then that moves us to the end of our agenda and adjournment, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.